Innovations. They can bring our people close to the future, while also having the possibility to nuke us back into the Stone Age. In World War II, this concept was fully fleshed out to create both life-saving and murderous advancements. Hello, I'm Ethan Morris, and I'm here to talk about the innovations of World War II and how they've changed society today. Let's get started.
Innovations!
The first innovation I will discuss is the pressurized cabin. Created by Charles William Morris, no relation, this innovation simulates the amount of pressure felt at 8,000 feet. It creates this by pumping air into the cabin. In modern-day airplanes, the jet engines suck in air to propel them forward, while some of the excess air is used to pressurize the cabin. The air has moisture added to it by cooling and humidifying it, and then it is circulated throughout the cabin. It is dangerous to fly without it because the higher you go up in the Earth's atmosphere, the less oxygen you get. Less oxygen can involve passengers' medical problems like headaches, shortness of breath, and temporarily harm vision. To ensure pilots and passengers would get enough oxygen, you would either need an oxygen mask for every passenger or a pressurized cabin. A pressurized cabin is like a big oxygen mask for the plane. So thanks to Charles Morris, you and your family don't have to strap on oxygen masks every time you take your trip to Aruba. Staying with planes, the jet engine is our second World War II innovation. The jet engine allowed for faster travel. Originally created by Hans von Ohan, yet credited to Frank Whittle, the jet engine replaced the previously used propeller planes. Propeller planes could only fly up to 12,000 meters, and the faster propeller plane traveled up to 540 miles per hour. When the first jet plane, the Messerschmitt Me-262, was created, it could fly as high as 15,850 meters and could fly up to 702 miles per hour. The Messerschmitt Me-262 ushered in new ideas for fights high in the sky. After World War II, the US switched to jet planes, and since then we have made major advancements with jet planes. Now, we use jet engines for commercial use, such as transporting cargo and passengers. And don't forget, it's the jet engine that sucks in the necessary oxygen for pressurized cabins to function. Jet engines are a huge part of air travel today, and it's all thanks to Hans von Ohan for doing all the work, and Frank Whittle for slapping his name on it.
See, innovations.
Ah, the sea! What a vast blue ocean it is today. Is that a boat? Or is it a car? No, it's an amphibious vehicle. Amphibious vehicles are the third innovation from World War II. They were created by Oliver Evans, and they were designed to travel well on land and sea. Before this was created, the Allies had a hard time moving across islands. Soldiers would have to get on boats and then switch to land vehicles, or just proceed on foot. Since the larger boats couldn't get close enough to shore, the soldiers would be pushed off and have to swim to shore with a 50-pound bag strapped to their back while shells rained from above. Thanks to the invention of amphibious vehicles, soldiers were protected from shelling while they landed on beaches. The first amphibious vehicle was called the Duke W. It weighed 6 tons and had 6 wheels. Its primary focus was to the transportation of goods, such as ammo and supplies, to the fighting areas. We still use amphibious vehicles today, such as in the tourist attraction known as duck tours. Here is an example of one. Our fourth innovation is another vehicle that was created when Sir Donald Coleman Bailey saw a problem during the war. Tanks and soldiers had trouble getting over areas of water. To solve this problem, he invented a deployable bridge that could transport the brave warriors across. Being the humble person he was, he called it the Bailey Bridge. They had a couple rules for developing the Bailey bridges. Rule number 1 is that it had to be adjustable to be able to stretch over a variety of lengths, yet strong enough to hold people and tanks. Second, it had to be made from easily accessible parts so they could be easily mass-produced. Third, it had to be able to fit into a general service lorry, a transport vehicle, and be no more than 600 pounds. And finally, it had to be simple to construct, as soldiers needed the bridges to go up and down fast. Today, the Bailey Bridge is now a name for a stronger, non-deployable bridge for cars and workers to pass. General Eisenhower said the Bailey Bridge was one of the 3 most important innovations of World War II, alongside the radar and heavy bomber.
Gadgets.
Speaking of radar, our 5th innovation, is one of the finest innovations to come out of World War II. This incredible piece of equipment is so great that it has not 1, not 2, but 3 different credited inventors. The first was a German physicist named Heinrich Hertz, who came up with the idea of radar through electromagnet experiments. He was inspired by the earlier theoretical work of Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell, the second inventor. Maxwell had formulated new discoveries about the electromagnetic field, such as the fact that both light and radio waves are both electromagnetic waves, but have different frequencies. The third credited inventor, who actually invented the radar, was Sir Robert Watson Watt. He was asked to create a device that could detect German planes, so he created the radar. Radar works like bats using echolocation. Both send out detection waves that bounce back if they hit something like a plane or fly. With it, the Allies could see when the Germans wanted to attack, and the Germans never saw it coming. After the war, the military use of radar tech slowed. But other uses were developed for radar. People still experimented with radar to make it better. Today, radar is used in a variety of ways. Some examples include finding out the weather by detecting water particles, air control towers that use radar to detect incoming planes, and police use it to find speeding cars. This brings us to our 6th innovation, synthetic rubber. Synthetic rubber was an essential tool for the Allies in World War II. Made by Fritz Hoffmann in 1909, and then later perfected in 1935, this rubber was used to make many things during World War II. It was used to replace normal rubber in the US. This is because synthetic rubber was more cost-effective, and so the US could mass produce more of it. It was also used to make tires, footwear, erasers, sports goods, elevator belts, hoses, tubes, and seismic bearings. After the war, synthetic rubber helped make solid fuel rockets and textiles. Even chewing gum in the 1960s was made from a form of synthetic rubber.
Medical innovations.
7th innovation was mobile army surgical hospitals. Created by Vincent P. Marone in 1935, they were effective and supported, yet weren't given a use. They were created so that doctors could be closer to soldiers when the soldiers were injured. A precursor for the so-called MASH units was the American Expeditionary First Mobile Hospital No. 1, which was established following the French example of military automobile surgical units in World War I. Although they were created and used in World War II, they were proven to be effective in the Korean War. In the Korean War, Michael E. DeBakey worked with many people to get mobile army surgical hospitals to the front lines. They produced great results. A seriously wounded soldier got to a mobile army surgical hospital and received a 97% survival chance once treated. Because he got to medical care in time, he was able to survive. The mobile army surgical hospital units continued to assist the U.S. in many wars over the years. Now, there are no more mobile army surgical hospital units. They have either been all retired or transformed into other medical buildings. The last mobile army surgical hospital unit was converted to a combat support hospital on October 16, 2006. Sulfa drugs were the first chemical substances used to systematically stop bacterial infections in humans and adding immunities to help prevent bacteria from entering. These were the first antibiotic-type medications before real antibiotics were even invented. They were used by soldiers in World War II to help get them into combat shape faster than waiting for a long recovery time, while also preventing bacterial infections. They were created in 1932 when Gerhard Domach experimented with the effects of protonzil, a red dye, on streptococcus infections in mice. They were later perfected by French scientists to create the first sulfa drug, sulfaminide. In the 1940s, sulfaminide was a widely used drug. Many other drugs were invented because of sulfaminide, such as sulfidazole, used for systematic bacterial infections, sulfadizine, used for urinary tract and intestinal tract infections, and sulfamethazine, used for urinary tract infections. After penicillin was invented, however, there was less use for sulfa drugs, but some sulfa drugs are still used today. One way is if someone is allergic to penicillin, like my father, they can use sulfa drugs.
Weapons of war!
The atom bomb is one of the most well-known innovations of World War II. Created by the Manhattan Project, led by Dr. Robert J. Oppenheimer, the first test was held in Alamogordo, New Mexico. It was set up in an open area and successfully detonated. This was called the Trinity test. The blast caused a massive mushroom cloud to erupt to about 40,000 feet high. An atom bomb works by a mix of nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. When nuclear fission is triggered, a large and sudden release of energy takes place. The atom bomb uses this massive amount of energy to erupt with the amount of power it does. The bomb was the reason World War II ended, as it was used on Japan to force them to surrender. The US dropped 2 atom bombs. The first was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. The second was dropped on Nagasaki 3 days later. The bombs killed a total of 120,000 people instantly, and more than 10,000 died from the aftermath of the radiation. Atom bombs are still in existence today, as many countries have these weapons in their arsenal. They are one of the most powerful and scariest weapons to ever be fired at a human. The V-2 rocket was at first something that struck fear into the hearts of the Allies. But this same technology helped astronauts get to the moon. Dr. Werner von Braun was a Nazi scientist working on the V2 rocket. A liquid-propelled, using rocket fuel, rocket was hard to do because liquid-propelled things were uncontrolled explosions, meaning that it was very hard to contain. The Germans planned to use it on the Allies to create mass destruction. It would do this by carrying the explosives toward where it was aimed and then crash into its target with a massive explosion. When Dr. Braun's facility was raided by Allied troops, he was taken to America for work by NASA. Using his designs, the United States was able to recreate it, not for destruction, but for taking people where they hadn't gone before. Together, they were able to create a rocket to the moon. Because of Nazi tech, we were able to get to the moon faster than any other country. Some scientists say we are still in the times of the V2 rocket, as the design has not updated much. There have been many great innovations that I haven't even covered, such as the first computer, built in 1936, used as a decoder. And today, we use many of these innovations in combinations, such as weather satellites. We use radar to read out the weather, and the satellite to get images of said weather, and we got the satellite up there using rockets. I only gave a small summary of the true beauty that these innovations have provided us with. Because of the ideas of World War II scientists, we live in the advanced era we do today.